Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Below the Line, the show about how movies are made. My name is Andres Ramirez, and I'm here with my co host, Zach Houston Scott. If I sound differently, it is because I'm trying a new mic, so any feedback is good. So, hey man, how are you?
Hey, doing pretty good. Another week, another successful day in the industry, in my opinion. And we're heading into the Easter long weekend, so I don't even have to work tomorrow.
That's good. I mean, and Sinners is coming out. A lot of good movies are coming out. Seems like the industry is good at the very least with Minecraft and some recent theatrical releases. How are you, man? Besides not having to work tomorrow.
Good, good. No, other than that, just feeling really positive coming into the weekend. Some big movie announcements dropped. New trailers from Disney for their upcoming superhero slates. Even today, as we're recording, Star Wars Celebration had a couple big announcements. So, yeah, I guess we can start talking about them.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of recent shows coming out, and Daredevil wrapped. Last of Us season 2 premiered. I don't know. Yeah, let's start talking. I guess I wanted to ask you the question: did you had a chance to watch The Last of Us? Yes, I'm gonna start there.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah, I did. I did. Definitely start strong again. Taking inspiration from the game, I was surprised to see.
You think
I mean,
so?
where it really counted, I mean, like the whole opening was a little different and giving more explanation to Abby why she did what she did. And other than that, so far, I'm really curious to see how they're going to adapt it. Just to continue off from last week's conversation.
I mean, it seems like she's going to go and play that mini golf game, mini game in Jacksonville. Neil Druckmann really hit it well in that safe area for her to do some golfing. I don't know. I thought that changed with Avi. I don't know. Maybe it's because I played the game. I did not really like that, but I think it justifies why she is how she is, I suppose. Although we still haven't seen the real picture of why, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Uh, which I guess in the game it's more infuriating because the reason is surely based on an NPC. I don't want to say who, but it's purely based on an NPC from the first game. If you know what I mean, you know what I
no,
mean.
I get what you mean. I get what you mean.
I was going to ask you, did you like the change of how they portray the stalkers?
The Stalkers. I don't know how I feel about them. I forgot actually. Were they a lot in season one or not even? Or
Well, I don't know because they have that whole meeting at the end of the episode with Tommy and his wife, and Ellie's describing about the new type of, I guess, infected, but they're the stalkers from the game, right? But they just haven't
yeah,
named it, right? But the zombies or infected seem smarter. I don't remember if that was how it was in the game.
no, I
Um,
don't either. It's been a while since I've played it, but we'll see how the rest of the season goes and how it turns out. Really, I'm curious more than anything to see what's happening.
Yeah, I also wanted to announce that I am going to give The Last of Us Part 2 a third try, and I am trying to play it again to compare and contrast. Because I think they're changing the story, but they're not. Like, I thought the first episode was very clear with a few differences from the gameplay, but I'm curious to see how they change it because they are. It seems like the infected are spreading themselves through the pipes. At least that's how the episode hints. But I don't know. Let's see how the season evolves.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Did you like Daredevil? Daredevil just wrapped.
I'm finally happy to see it come to an end, and now we can move on to a season two that's a little more cohesive instead of the Frankenstein season one that was given to us.
So,
But
would you say he has been born again, or is he going to be born again?
he will be born again in season two because I feel that is the story that these new showrunners wanted to tell. Because I think looking at the whole thing now that it's finished, there is an obvious point where they took what was already established and they had to create a beginning point and an end point, especially with certain villains and certain plot points that connected more to the Netflix show. So,
Yeah, I thought the whole season was building up to something. And I don't know, did you had the feeling without going into spoilers? I'm sure in a couple of weeks we will go and dive deeply. But did you felt like some episodes were missing in terms of the pacing of the whole season? Like it sort of felt like the ending of the season was like a mid-season finale. If you remember what those felt like back in the day when we had cable TV.
yes and no. It ended on a cliffhanger, makes people want to watch season two, especially with it coming next year. In a sense, it's still serialized TV that honestly, even back when Daredevil was on Netflix, it still like was aiming towards something and setting up the next season. Except season three, because obviously that never evolved into a season four up until now. So,
I mean,
but
it was meant to. It was meant to. But I mean, I think here they're setting up some exciting stuff. I'm curious to see which actor is going to start calling their agents from the Netflix era and be like, "Hey, can I be? Can I join Charlie and Vincent in the MCU, please?" Because it seems like, characters like Jessica Jones. I mean, the Punisher is already in the universe, but
yeah,
some of the were they the defenders?
yeah, Luke Cage and Iron Fist.
Like I'm
You really
sure a
want
lot of those
Finn
those
Jones back?
actors. Yeah.
You really want Finn Jones back into the MCU?
Well, it seems like they probably are going to make those calls for the next phase of the MCU, whatever.
I
Uh,
suppose. Um,
yeah, it's a good
I'll
movie,
say,
good
I will
show.
say too, it gave me the most gruesome scene I've ever seen in anything Marvel related. On that note,
Oof, I wonder which one was it. But let's not talk spoilers. I'm
yeah, not
sure we'll
yet.
talk Daredevil soon, and then we can dive into spoilers. I think
Yeah,
I know which one you're talking about, but I'm not sure. Um, I was going
It's-
to ask you, have you seen anything good recently theatrically? Did you had a chance to go to the movies this past weekend?
well, other than Minecraft, which we talked about, no, I have not this week. Revenge of the Sith is coming back in the theaters this week, so I'm definitely going to be watching that. And yes, we will have more Star Wars to talk about this episode, but
You must. There is do or do not. There is no try. You must go see. Especially as a Canadian, you must support Hayden Christensen. As a
oh,
Canadian, yeah, you have to.
well, but for those who don't know, that's actually my favorite Star Wars movie. It's the one I enjoy rewatching the most, and I honestly, legit think it's a great movie. I know
Hello
it's
there.
yeah, no, very quotable. Like regardless of all the memes that have come from it. I
This
mean,
is where the fun begins.
yeah, so
Yeah.
uncivilized. No, it's a good one. Oh
I forgot that one, but that's after he beats Grievous. Yeah, I forgot about that one. So
yeah.
uncivilized.
No, it's really I prefer it. It's probably the Star Wars movie I enjoy the most. And it actually has a really good dramatic story when you piece it all together. But
No,
no,
yeah, it does.
I think it ties well in today's episode because as Daredevil was coming to an end, we wanted to discuss about shows that went through a creative overhaul in productions and also just changing directors, changing part producers, changing just story, whether it was because it wasn't working or because of personal tragedy or because just disagreements between creatives. So yeah, I'll kind of get you started, Andres, if there's something you want to discuss about.
No, I just think it's interesting because we were looking at a list that you created for this week's episode, and some of the films I'm aware of. Obviously, some of them have sparked a massive social media revolution with like movements like the release of Snyder Cut. That's probably the most famous studio versus creative who directed the movie film of the last decade, probably, right? But
Oh, absolutely.
something like Bohemian Rhapsody, which was originally directed by Brian Singer, and then the DP or Dexter Fletcher, who ended up doing, correct me if I'm wrong, but he did the Elton John movie, right?
Yep, he did Rocket Man. You are correct.
But arguably Brian Singer directed the most impressive scene of the film, which was the concert at the end of the film. So I think it's why we named the title "Directed by?" question mark, because from a lot of these films, you cannot really tell who was the director. Like in most cases, there's no director's cut or what people like to know to tell or today the Snyder cut, right? Like the Snyder cut phenomenon doesn't always happen. So I think it's interesting because I think it has changed the industry. Not the Snyder cut. I'm talking about the idea of a movie failing. It has changed the industry in many ways. It has changed careers. So, which movie do you want to start with?
I mean, you kind of alluded to the big one, which is Justice League. I mean, there's no movie that definitely went through production hell than that one and then came back with its director's cut because you look at both cuts of the movie, the theatrical one Josh Whedon directed and did reshoots on
Did
versus
he?
Zack Snyder. I think he did, or if it was studio driven, I mean, yeah, this is the most sorriest attempt to copy a studio because I remember watching Justice League when it came out in theaters, like opening weekend, because I was a little excited to see a little lighter take, and I felt bad for Snyder given what happened to him, and also just I had faith in Josh Whedon because he built a lot of goodwill with the first two Avengers movies and oversaw a lot of Phase Two's Marvel. But when I left, I felt it was fine for what it was, but something was missing. Like it didn't make
Of
me want
course.
to think afterwards, "Oh, I want to see this again." No, it was definitely something was very off. And over the course of the years as I'm hearing more production stories and I'm just seeing all like the news that came from it, it definitely was a movie that I wanted to see the original cut because it was apparent that there was no definitive version, or he didn't take over. Whedon started from Snyder. He just redid a lot to appease some executives who, at the time, were just looking to get a big bonus before a merger was happening. So that's
I think that's an interesting case because to Joss Whedon's defense, not that he needs it. The reason I say he to me it felt like he was there to cut a film. He did have reshoots, but he didn't. He was not involved in the script writing on how the film was written originally, because I think if you compare and contrast both cuts, more or less the beats of the film are the same in many ways. So I think he edited the film to be more digestible. Because how long is the Snyder cut?
4 hours,
And the Whedon cut?
2 hours. So it's half
So
the time.
So I think he made it more manageable for a theatrical release because I don't think the Snyder cut, even if he was able to complete the film, because obviously he had to go over family tragedy with his daughter, who rest in peace, terrible thing that happened to Zach. But I think ultimately it was the pressure of DC and Warner having the need to be like Marvel, which ironically, almost a decade later, they're still struggling to be like Marvel, and they haven't been able to establish a cinematic universe like Marvel. I guess the irony is that Marvel right now is about to be ending. Some might say, like
Rebooting.
they're having a hard time keeping it up, which is interesting, I guess. My thought was, you know, Do you think Joss Whedon really took over, or you know, hindsight 2021 when the Snyder Cut came out? Do you think that Snyder Cut was the original cut that he had in mind for the film, or he was like, screw this. I know my universe is dead. I'm just gonna show everything that I got.
No,
Uh,
I think there was a plan for more. And I mean, just with the box office and the pressure mounting to, get it done and over with, kind of like how Snow White was with the Disney executives, I feel just really played a lot of tribute because it's telling that Wonder Woman, which came out the same year, made more money. And DC decided from then on, oh, we're just going to do standalone movies because that's what the public wants for these characters. And for a bit, it did work, but then the pandemic hit, and unfortunately, they couldn't keep the momentum as people were losing interest in these heroes, and the brand was really inconsistent. Something that hopefully is fixed when Superman comes out in
to be
June.
fair, Wonder Woman Part 2 was horrible. It was not a
Yeah,
good movie.
and
So it
correction,
was
it
not
comes
just
out.
COVID,
No, it
you
wasn't
know.
COVID. No, honestly, I actually don't mind Wonder Woman 1984. I think it reminds me of kind of like Batman Returns in a sense, because it is a director just going all out with her vision of Wonder Woman. And I mean, look at Tim Burton's Batman Returns. I will not call that the definitive adaptation of Batman, but it's definitely the definitive version of Tim Burton's Batman. So in this sense, I think it's the definitive version of Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman. Take that with a grain of salt or not. So
I mean, I do think it's going to be hard to recast Gal Gadot as part of the DCU or DCCU or whatever it's called nowadays. I think she was wonderful in the role, and it's arguably her best role to date. Uh,
yeah, I agree with that. But I
uh,
guess, yeah, no. I think another movie, now changing subjects because I don't want us talking about the Snyder Cut the whole time, that suffered a lot of
hashtag
creative.
release the air cut.
Oh, God, you're not one of those.
No,
Is,
no. I mean, I'm curious to see it. Screw them. Just release every cut from the DCU era of tragedy, I guess. Release Joker cut, Joker 2, the cut that it's good or whatever.
okay, that was the final cut. What are you talking about? That wasn't definitely not studio metal. That was just Todd Phillips giving a fuck you to the incels and people
There
who
must
like
be a
this
Phoenix
movie.
cut or a Gaga cut.
No, there
You
was
know,
no cut of that movie. That was good. But another similar one to Justice League, believe it or not, to involve Superman again, is Superman 2. I mean,
1980.
yeah, 1980. Because, I mean, for those who don't know, the movie was shot back to back with the first Superman, with Richard Donner directing both parts, or at least that was the plan, and to release them in the span of a couple years, pending the success of the first movie. And whether or not, if it was successful, they'd continue the second. However, he had a lot of back and forth between the producers who didn't see his vision through. So he was let go of the project, and someone else, Richard Lester, came in to finish the
Mm-hmm.
project. And I mean, even that had its own director's cut years later when Donner was able to finish his movie, which, again, similar to Justice League, is very tonally different because if you watch the theatrical cut of Superman 2, it is a lot more goofier. It's a lot more slapstickier. It's a lot more like they make choices that probably audiences back in 1980 wouldn't pay to like question or care about. But now, like, you look at it and compare the two versions and you're like, oh, I see what they had to do to cut corners. And even then, like, the Donner cut isn't a definitive version of Superman 2. It's unfortunately like dealt with the footage that it has. Like, they even used a screen test for one of the moments too. So
That's interesting because I think I have only watched the Donner cut. I mean, I don't know if the Richard Lester cut is available to people or if
oh, it
it's even
is.
available on Max.
Really, I did not know that on Max. Like, I would think Superman 2, the Lester cut, would be on there.
I don't know. Let me check as we speak. I don't know. I think it's one of those things where I sort of feel Superman is so attached to Richard Donner that I just find it interesting that, I think for most people that watch that film, the definitive version they see is the Richard Donner cut. But I don't know. What was your experience when you first watched that one?
It was different. Like it's really unique to see people's different visions of a finished movie. Like you can tell when Donner left and Lester stepped in, they had to keep all of Gene Hackman's footage because he left the film in support of Donner. All of Donner's footage was used for Lex Luthor, and then anything that was reshot just had to be done. And stylistically, you can tell the difference, even like the framing of everything, and just the sight gags, and just the way that it was posed. Really, I can't describe it, but you can tell. And when I saw the Donner cut, I said, "Okay, this is like the equivalent of what the Godfather was. Like there's a part one
Hmm.
and a part two, and then a part three that's disappointing afterwards."
So just to establish, the Richard Donner cut is the only one available in Max. So the Superman normal cut, I guess, is not available. So that's kind of interesting how the fixed cut kind of has become the standard nowadays. I guess if you don't own it, although I'd be curious if you could buy the actual real cut, like on Best Buy or something like that. Maybe
So
it's
I
not
guess,
available anymore.
I mean,
Uh,
I own it on DVD, the Lester cut. So that's interesting, huh? I mean,
you might
support
be
your
you might
support
be
your
holding on to something very precious. I don't know. Physical media seems to be an interesting idea. Uh,
absolutely support your physical media, folks.
Let me ask you a question regarding Superman. Do you think that killed Superman as a franchise? In
Uh,
terms of the sense that since the 80s, it's been struggling to find its voice, if that makes any sense.
I mean, as the new movie comes out, I will probably dedicate an episode to that. But I
Will
think
do
it
for
was
sure.
probably the last Superman movie that people broadly embraced. Because I mean, after that, there's just been nothing that's really like it's so divisive. Because
Superman and Lois.
oh yeah,
That's
no,
good.
that is not a movie. I will say that. So, okay, that is a movie because three had Richard Pryor in it. And no one likes that one. I kind of like ideas of it, and it was shot in Calgary, so that was pretty cool. Four is just terrible. It's a schlock fest, a really low budget mess. Superman Returns
Tries.
was just a nice attempt to pay homage to the movies that came before it, but for 2006, I think people were expecting a little bit more. And then Man of Steel and it's like Batman v Superman stuff, like they have their fans, but I mean, obviously they're not what I think Superman should be
No,
personally.
they're
And I'm
not.
speaking as a fan that I do like Man of Steel, but it's not the definitive Superman that people would. Yeah, but moving on from Superman, I mean, look at one more comic book movie I think we should talk about that went through a bit of hell. Is another one as well coming out with its trailer dropping today is Fantastic Four,
No,
the Josh Trank
come on.
one.
Fix the title. This is Fan Four Stick
Fan
2015.
Four. Oh Lord.
This is an interesting one though, because like, what did Josh Trank did before this movie?
He did Chronicle for Fox, that found footage film with Michael B. Jordan and Dane DeHaan, which I enjoy. I think it's pretty good. Definitely of the time with found footage movies being popular, but I won't go out of my way to say it holds up very well.
I haven't seen it in a very long time. I just think this is a very interesting, almost cautionary tale for young upcoming filmmakers like ourselves, in the sense that Josh Trank really did a really good independent film, right? He gets hired by 20th Century Fox to make a movie that they needed to do in order to hold the rights at the time, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So they hired this hot upcoming director, and clearly the pressure got to him because, whether you want to believe the rumors that he had erratic behavior, that he was drunk high on set, he had an interesting take. I think he recently spoke about it on a podcast, And out of all the director cuts, it's one that I would be interested in seeing because I think he had an interesting take. But I think out of all the consequences, not only the studio lost millions of dollars, but he also lost his career since then. He was meant to direct Boba Fett movie, and that kind of killed that project, and that project became Boba Fett the show. But he had an interesting idea, making it more body horror like elements, but all
Yeah,
of those things died during the reshoots made by the studio. So
but
my
in
question to
oh, go
you:
ahead.
who actually directed this movie after Josh Trank kind of said, "Screw this movie"?
Definitely, you could tell from the third act the studio took over. But speaking as a bit of a fan, and definitely someone who's a fan of the comics, and just from even like the previous adaptations, it is a unique take. But I think it's one that fans would definitely not have enjoyed because, I mean, it's taking such a colorful cosmic series that's known for its adventurous spirit and just really bringing it dark and gritty for no reason other than just to try something different or just have like this weird, unique spin on it, which I'm not saying could have worked, but it's just either it was undercooked by the studio who had no faith in his vision, or it was just a matter of like the way he presented it or his behavior or something, or maybe just throwing a tantrum for not getting what he wanted. But I really just feel like something was lost in translation when trying to make it, or there was a desperation to get a new version out because if they didn't, it would have to go back to Marvel, which they were trying to avoid at the time. I mean, it's null and void now because literally Fantastic Four is back with Marvel. But yeah, what could have been is I don't think would have been accepted.
I,
Really?
I, I don't know. I think it's one of those movies where I think the studio had tried the Kirby like colors in the OG mid 2000s films. I
Yeah.
thought the change of greedy was also a reflection of the time in cinema. I mean, everybody wanted to do the next Dark Knight sort of movie. I mean, I really like the casting with Miles Teller and Jessica Biel, and what was the
Wait, Jessica
thing?
Biel, you mean Kate Mara?
Yeah, Kate Mara. I thought the casting was good. Victor Van Doom was horrible casting, and that idea did not make sense. But I like how the first act was grounded in science. It just felt like the more they stripped his vision out of it, the more incoherent it became. And it's a tragedy. I think it's an interesting cautionary tale for both studios and filmmakers of maybe not hiring or get yourself hired just because you're the new hot talent in town. Because since then, he has only made one movie called Capone with Tom Hardy back in 2020, and the film was bombed critically. Currently holds
Yeah,
a 4.7 in IMDb by the users and a 46 by the critics. And, he
I
seems to
saw
be
that movie.
struggling
I
to
saw
come
that
back.
movie. It's a weird experience. That's all I'll say. Tom Hardy waddles, or like he makes
He
penguin
does.
noises throughout the movie. It's so weird.
He does. But, it's an interesting movie that had real consequences in people's careers.
Yeah. And I mean, stepping away from the comic books for a second, like you look at other movies, like I want to talk quickly about horror for a second. Like you look at something like
Ooh.
Exorcist. I don't know if people know this, but in the early 2000s, they tried to bring it back and ended up making two versions of it because one was considered unreleasable. So they hired the director of Nightmare on Elm Street 3 to basically recut and re edit it into what's known as Exorcist the Beginning. And I mean, if you compare it with that, and eventually what became the second version of this movie, Dominion, prequel to The Exorcist, I mean, it's night and day. Like, they're two different horror movies that are just do different things. Like Exorcist the Beginning is more your typical like jump scare horror, whereas Dominion is like more slow burn, like your typical A24 movie you'd see nowadays.
Really? I only seen the first one. Would you say it's worth seeing it?
These movies, no, no. The Dominion one was directed by Paul Schrader. You know who Paul Schrader is, right?
Sounds familiar, but
Taxi Driver.
oh, did oh yeah, he wrote Taxi Driver. He didn't direct it.
Yeah, he wrote it, but that's kind of what he's best known for. So yeah, he directed and basically wanted to reboot the series. Obviously, that didn't work, but I'd
It
honestly
still
say it.
hasn't worked.
Yeah.
It still hasn't worked.
I mean, we'll see. Maybe Mike Flanagan will get it right.
Is he doing it?
Yes, he's doing the next one because Believer was such a disappointment by
It was.
people. Yeah, don't bother seeing it. It's the same team that did the new Halloween movies. Just right out of the gate, it floundered hard.
Those Halloween movies were bait. They were the first one was exciting, but the sequels were kind of the same washed out ideas. They just kind of copy and pasted from all the Halloween movies and brought the best ideas and made a smoothie of Halloween, if that
Yeah,
makes any sense.
no, it makes perfect sense. It's just crazy to me that it ended up the way it did. And I mean, now actually, that's a story in of itself because I mean, the director David Gordon Green, who was supposed to do a trilogy of Exorcist movies, is now leaving, and Mike Flanagan is picking up the torch. So it's a continuous thing that keeps happening.
Mike Flanagan is an interesting choice, but see, I would argue films like The Exorcist should only be one film. Do we really need the thousand Exorcist films?
But then we want to get Exorcist 3 with Brad Dourif, which, I mean, ironically, that's probably my favorite because it's just a fun movie.
He is Chucky. He's better as Chucky.
Very true. To end the night, do you want to talk a little Star Wars?
I was wondering if before Star Wars we can go to the space and discuss the issues from Alien 3. Arguably the
Oh,
film that killed the franchise a long time ago.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting because for people who don't know, that was the first film David Fincher ever directed. And
Yes, the David
Fox,
Fincher,
yeah,
the
Fox
legendary director.
Fox in typical fashion just decided like he wasn't seasoned enough and took his film away because he had a different approach to how Alien was going to be taken. Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't like Alien 3. I don't know how he could have made it any better, but I mean, it is what it is. And I mean, it's got some cool ideas like the prison planet. And I mean, a shaved Ripley is pretty iconic when you see her. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on the whole thing?
So, what was his vision? Do you know?
His vision was more that it would have been a proper sequel to Aliens. Like it would have had all the original cast come back and it would have continued, but on Earth. But it just didn't go the way the studio wanted. They wanted just to kill the characters. They wanted to,
Well, they don't
have
kill
Ripley.
Ripley, right?
No,
They
no, they
kill
didn't kill Ripley.
the girl that escapes from the planet, right?
Newt, yeah, they kill her.
Yeah,
They kill Hicks and they killed off oh god, what's it's been a while since I've seen that movie
me
actually.
too. Me too. But they kill all the survivors from the second movie that was
Yeah.
directed by James Cameron, right? I thought it's been a while since I've seen them, but I think one of the issues was that also they didn't have a script when they started filming it,
Yeah.
and you can tell. I mean, I do think David Fincher at the time was unexperienced when he was making the film. I mean, maybe it's a lack of screenplay, but I think it would have been a continuation of. I don't know how you can go from horror, action. What's the missing element? A thriller, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of being in a prison could be interesting because you're kind of like what Fede Alvarez does in a way. Kind of contain in a same environment. Although Fede Alvarez directed the most recent one, and it was okay. I was not a huge fan, but it's probably some of the best aliens we've seen. But
Well, I'm hoping Alien Earth will pick up the torch and
Oh, that's a
finish.
TV show, right?
Yeah, that's coming out this year.
So, shall we move to a galaxy far, far away?
Well, yes, we shall. I mean, Star Wars now, you could argue, is the latest example of creative overhauls. I mean, we have three movies.
Well,
The
give me a
last,
timeout there. Give me a timeout there. I would say that's current Lucasfilm, but that's a
yeah,
different story. Not just
current.
Star Wars.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, you look at Willow and Indiana Jones and all of its
Star
other things.
Wars.
Star Wars, yes. But I mean, of all the projects, which one do you think has sinned the most in terms of a creative overhaul?
Which ones? Which three are you thinking of?
Rogue One, because originally, I mean, for those who don't know, Gareth Edwards was hired to direct it. He presented a cut to Disney, and Tony Gilroy basically ended up finishing it for reshoots and is doing the Andor show. Solo, which had its directors be fired essentially and replaced with Ron Howard. And then
Only to
finally,
win an
Rise.
Oscar
Yep. And then
because
finally,
they won an
Rise
Oscar.
because they won an Oscar. Or maybe they just made it too funny. And then finally, Rise of Skywalker, which had its director fired before shooting began and replaced with the director of the seventh one, J.J. Abrams. So Colin Trevorrow could make a terrible Jurassic World movie.
So, what was your question again?
Which of those three do you think is the worst in terms of the creative overhaul process?
I think the Rise of Skywalker, mainly because it has killed the franchise theatrically. You know, you could argue Rogue One had that impact, but I think the Andor show is doing okay. So that side of the Disney Star Wars empire is okay. Solo kind of killed the spin-offs, but maybe that was all meant to be because now they're doing it in Disney Plus. Although you could argue some would be better as movies like Obi-Wan.
Yeah,
Um,
that always drove me nuts. Why wasn't Obi-Wan the movie and Solo the TV show? To me, that makes more sense.
See, I don't think Solo should have been a TV show. I don't know if you played the most. I mean, I know you have a PS5, but today actually, the new Indiana Jones game launched on the PS5, the ones that
Mhm.
was exclusive to Microsoft, and I started playing it because I pre-ordered it 2 days ago, and the game feels like a movie, and you don't have the issue of, Indiana Jones is played by Troy Baker. Those who do not know who Troy Baker is, he's probably one of the best performers for motion capture for games, but he plays Joel in The Last of Us. That's his most famous role. But in this one, they're able to make you believe you're seeing Harrison Ford. And I think this story is supposed to bridge the gap between the Last Crusade and, is it the Temple of Doom or Raiders? Those two movies. Yeah, they're supposed to grasp that, and I think Solo should have been a game. It allows people to be immersed, and you don't have to worry about casting. I think casting is very, very, very difficult. So I don't know. What do you think about that idea?
I think you're right. Yeah. No, I never saw it as that take before as a game. Definitely. No. I mean, a TV show would have been fun. Him going on different adventures and also just meeting
I just think you were
Jabba. And,
doomed to fail because who can replace Harrison Ford?
yeah,
In terms of
that's
casting,
very true.
like that's going up the hill, really. Because you're casting somebody that has to bring their own take, but at the same time be like Harrison Ford. That's extremely difficult. If you make it
But
a game, you know, it's less or animated for the lack. Heck, animated
but
could
to
have
play
worked.
devil's advocate a little bit, I mean, Alec Guinness is Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. Like
True.
him playing a younger version.
But they were like 50 years apart in terms of the timeline in the canon of Star Wars, I suppose.
Yeah,
Uh,
but I do agree with you that Rise of Skywalker suffered the most in terms of a creative overhaul because that is production hell. And I mean, the final result speaks for itself. That the fact we haven't gotten a Star Wars movie for almost
A
10
decade,
years, a decade, yeah, because 2019, I mean, I guess 6 years. I mean, that streak will be broken next year with Mandalorian
in
and
theory.
Grogu. Yeah. And as we're recording this, they announced a new Star Wars movie, Star Wars Starfighter, with Ryan Gosling to star and Sean Levy of Deadpool and Wolverine to direct.
The
Uh,
Canadians saved the Star Wars franchise.
did they though? I mean,
I
literally,
mean, they're about to, right?
Mikey, I guess Mikey Madison basically declined a role in the film. It was all over the news outlets. So
I don't know. Going back to the Rise of Skywalker, do you think maybe it was a lack of production overhaul from the studio from Lucasfilm that caused the Rise of Skywalker to be so problematic? Like, what I mean by that is, do you think Kathleen Kennedy should have been very strict from the get go of the whole trilogy? And especially with, what's his name? The guy that directed the mid one. Uh,
oh, Ryan Johnson.
yeah, with Ryan Johnson.
I think personally, like you can do three different directors telling three different
Of
stories, but
course.
even to the fairness of Lucas, like especially with the prequel trilogy, there was an end game plan. Whereas I don't think Disney thought ahead. They just kind of thought, well, we'll have these three directors kind of piece it together and stitch like the original trilogy. But even that had Lucas's involvement in some capacity. Like he was still
Well, he
writing the
wrote
scripts,
it.
yeah, and here he didn't have anything. So I think that's what really hurt them in the end. And now you had this movie you're trying to follow up with, but bringing back the original guy to tie up his loose ends and kill the momentum that, I mean, say what you will about Last Jedi and what it did and how people feel about it, but at the very least, like it got me excited to see a new Star Wars movie. And then Abrams basically killed all momentum for me. Like I couldn't even sit through it in one setting the first time I watched Rise of Skywalker. In fact, I don't think I've seen it since. I remember playing Complete Saga or the Skywalker Saga on PlayStation,
Lego.
and I forgot literally moments. Yeah, Lego.
I was going to ask you, have you ever read the Colin Trevorrow script?
I have, yes, and it is better. I think it's bold, it's daring. I love what they did with Kylo Ren, like not redeeming him. I think that's really what hurt it is he was trying to basically do what people thought they wanted in a Star Wars movie instead of, challenging them.
I mean, I think if they had let him, the trilogy would have made more sense in many ways. I think J.J. Abrams was focused on deleting The Last Jedi, essentially, because that's all he did, and making sense to his style of narrative, which is box, the mystery box sort of thing, which ended up not working. And I think Ryan Johnson did screw him up by killing Snoke because I don't think he was meant to die in the second part. I
No,
think
he
he was
wasn't.
supposed to be the third villain, and yeah, I think Luke was meant to have a better role, but I think ultimately that whole fiasco, whoever you want to blame, Ryan Johnson, J.J. Abrams, Kathleen Kennedy, Mark Hamill, that really affected the future of Star Wars and the careers of the people involved. I mean, look, J.J. Abrams hasn't been able to direct anything since, and
Hmm.
Ryan Johnson is kind of stuck on Netflix with his Glass Onion thing, but
With his Knives Out trilogy.
he hasn't also made something as huge as Star Wars since.
Yeah, and I know they keep saying he's going to do a trilogy, but
That's dead. That's
yeah.
dead.
Oh well. But on that note, I think we're done for the night. Do you have any closing comments on production hell and blockbusters that have had changes and everything?
Well, I'm looking forward to see the blockbuster mess of a hell that will be Spider Verse 2 or Spider Verse 3.
Beyond
That
the
seems
Spider
to be
Verse?
headed into the same direction, right? It's been delayed so many times that seems like studio hall interference might be there. Uh, the one that I do hope has studio interference is Narnia.
Yeah, me too. Meryl Streep as Aslan. That's a bold strategy. Let's see where that pays off.
I mean, locally for Netflix, they don't have to publish the box office, although that might be the first Netflix theatrical movie, which is insane. But I hope somebody has a studio interference there and be like, hey, 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 that's not what the fans want. Although I don't know if the studios are daring enough with the most recent announcement of the casting of the Harry Potter show.
Uh, that's
Uh,
a that's a topic we'll get into on another day because I'm not ready to discuss that yet.
but they haven't casted the whole show. They just
Yeah,
casted the adults.
I have very mixed opinion on all the adults, regardless of who they are. And I mean, it's only book one we're going through. We still have a whole lot of casting to get through.
Look, dude, I think this could be a Rings of Power situation for HBO.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, as Alan Rickman said, and I will stand by Alan Rickman always, and he will always be my Severus Snape.
me too.
If you know, you know what I
Yeah.
mean. But yeah, those are my closing thoughts. Oh, I'm really looking forward to seeing Sinners this weekend with Michael B. Jordan and what's his name, Ryan Coogler. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, it's a very genre-driven Western film, and I don't want to say what the genre aspect of it is, in case you haven't gotten from the trailers. I was spoiled by one critic, but seems like a fun movie, perfect for Easter, some might say.
Yeah, I agree with that. No, it looks wild. I'm definitely excited. Like this guy hasn't disappointed me yet in anything he's done. So,
Also, Warfare. That
oh
seems like
yes.
a good movie. Also, talking about that one, I'm sure we'll talk about Sinners. But did you know that Coogler worked with Stallone, right? And Stallone has always complained about the lack of control that he has from the Rocky IP. But did you know that Coogler signed one of the first kind of deal where in 25 years, him or his state, you never know, will get control of the Sinners IP? Like it will leave Warner Brothers IP control. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that actually. Wow.
Interesting idea. So, yeah. What about you? Do you have any final thoughts before you sign us off?
No, just for those folks curious, I will say, check out Star Wars Duel of the Fates, the original
Script.
episode 9 that could have been the original script. In my opinion, it's superior. But yeah, thanks for listening tonight. He's Andres Ramirez. You can follow him at Jaro2096. And I'm Zach Houston. You can follow me at the Zach Houston, or follow the podcast at Below the Line 2025. Yeah, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day, night, wherever you are.
Bye bye. Ciao. Adios.
Bye.
Goodbye. And shout out to our listeners all around the world. See you next week.